South Africa's largest city, Johannesburg, faces many problems that have plagued it for years, the first of which is poverty. Over half the population of South Africa lives in poverty, and around 20% of people living in Johannesburg live in abject poverty. This 20% of people accounts for 15% of families living in poverty in Johannesburg. Many of these people live in makeshift settlement camps that lack electricity and other necessary services such as roads, running water, and garbage collection. In addition, 40% of people live in inadequate homes lacking basic services. Just under 120,000 families live in informal settlements, and around 110,000 families live in illegal dwellings. Close to 5,000 people in Johannesburg live on the street. If the government provided more services, as they are attempting to do, less people would be living in abject poverty. Blacks make up 72% of the poor population in Johannesburg, which can be directly attributed to the recently ended apartheid, which divided the country until 1994. If the apartheid hadn't existed, less blacks would be in poverty. Poverty can be seen in Johannesburg to be a direct reflection of education, as the highest levels of people living in poverty have completely little or no schooling whatsoever. If people were more educated in Johannesburg, poverty would not be as endemic as it is today. The government can and should create education programs to correct this. The poor earn on average 25,000 rand, which is equivalent to around $3,300 a year, and is hardly survivable. Illegal immigrants contribute to the poverty problem in Johannesburg, as they take necessary welfare services away from the struggling legal citizens who need those services. In this instant, if the government added stricter immigration laws, less poverty would occur. The government is trying to correct the poverty problem in Johannesburg by creating jobs, undertaking large-scale housing projects, increasing education, and providing basic needs to poor, and even exploring basic income grants, which would give 110 rand per month to all adults making fewer than 46,000 rand per year. Crime rates are high in Johannesburg. Between 1993 and July 1997, 62% of Johannesburg residents were the victim of a crime. More than 25% of people were victims to more than one crime in 5 years. Recently, there have been new technologies to help reduce crime rates. As of December 11, 2008, every street corner in Johannesburg Central Business District is under high-tech surveillance called the CCTV Surveillance Center. With its 216 cameras, it is capable of detecting stolen cars. This system has helped reduce crime rates a lot because the police response time is less than 1 minute, and it can also capture muggings and even murderers. Another crime-reducing system in Johannesburg is called the Interactive Remote Monitoring Control Room. For all who register for this, 3 cameras will be placed in their home or business, and there will be a panic or alert button which can be pressed to alert the police of a crime. The system also has the capability for the operator to talk to the criminal and even pepper spray or shock them. Part of the reason that reducing crime in Johannesburg is so important is that in 2010, the FIFA World Cup opening and closing matches will be held there. Money and help from Rudy Giuliani will bring down the crime rates in preparation for this event. In the past, all Johannesburg has done is catch criminals. Then they get bailed out and go back on the streets and commit yet another crime. They may have been caught with the surveillance system, but it won't stop them from committing another crime. If more efforts are put on crime prevention, education, and cleaning up the city, crime rates will drop. If the government spent less time preparing for the World Cup and tried to fix their near total lack of political power, crime rates will drop. Without a strong government, the city will run wild. If the government focuses less than $1 billion on surveillance programs and more on fixing the economy, crime rates will drop. Johannesburg's history proves that as the economy gets better, so does the crime rate. If the economy is better, there will be less people in poverty. History shows that as poverty rates go down, crime rates will follow. Working on the economy and unemployment will cause the crime rates to get much better. Urban sprawl is a spreading of a city and its suburbs over rural land at the fringe of an urban area. 3 land use patterns that help contribute to urban sprawl are single-use zoning, low-density land use, and car-dependent communities. Many South African cities are characterized by urban sprawl, in particular Johannesburg. Residential areas in Johannesburg tend to be far apart from areas of unemployment, shopping, and public services due to single-use zoning. Single-use zoning refers to places where commercial, residential, or industrial areas are separated from one another. These areas are then separated by large land tracts of open space, infrastructure, or other barriers. Generally, walking from the residential areas to the areas of interest is not feasible, and so residents must rely on automobiles. Some 34% of the population use private transportation to travel to school or work. The low-density land use of Johannesburg refers to the single-family housing units that are being built as opposed to high-density housing units such as apartment buildings. The single-family homes tend to have few stories and are spaced farther apart from one another due to lawns, gardens, streets, or parking areas. These single-family housing units tend to form suburbs with long curving roads, cul-de-sacs, and designated places to enter and exit the development. Wealthier suburbs invest in golfing and country estates and walled and gated blocks. This sense of security and exclusiveness in the suburbs is further contributing to urban sprawl. Residential development accounts for a third of all development in Johannesburg. The difference between city suburbs tend to be socioeconomic. The richer residents tend to live in the north of the city center in the northern suburbs, while the poor live to the south and on the fringes of the city in the former townships. Many people see themselves as being a resident of their suburb first and foremost, to being a resident of Johannesburg. To rectify the problem of urban sprawl, Johannesburg needs to improve housing and crime in the city center so people are more willing to live where they work and play. More focus needs to be placed on building high-density housing units such as apartments so that less land will be used and urban sprawl can be controlled. Although Johannesburg has been rid of apartheid for over 10 years now, the effects of its previously racist apartheid government have left scars in Johannesburg's education system. Although on the rise, Johannesburg's average literacy remains extremely low at 38%, with its black population's literacy being even lower. And although the current education system is now desegregated, it remains very racist. Not only can the poorer blacks not even afford the lowest levels of education, but most of the time black students are not even effective in schools because schools can still be prejudiced and can continue to prepare them for the laboring class. What if the racist apartheid government had not existed? The controlling and powerful white Europeans would probably have created a different but still racist government to keep the blacks and their power and knowledge to a minimum. What if race was no longer a current prejudicial issue? This could in some ways be currently occurring. Actual discrimination based on race has decreased. However, prejudice based on social standing has drastically increased. The problem with this is that most people in the upper class are white, and the lower class remains predominantly black. This becomes a problem when it comes to education because schools in the nicer, richer communities use the majority of resources and money, leaving the poorer communities, which are predominantly black with fewer resources, little financial aid, and a lot of children who need attention and guidance. What if the government attempts to use their power and money to support the increase of education into poorer communities? This is also true, and although has good intentions, it has drastically decreased the overall efficiency and quality of the Johannesburg education system for both blacks and whites. What if education was free and public in Johannesburg? No-fee schools are actually in the making since 2006 in order to get more black children into the education system. And slowly it is helping. Although the government is making progress equalizing the education system in Johannesburg, a lot more drastic measures need to be taken to completely rid the schools of racism.